So what can I tell you about this film?
Well, I would like to ask you. It seems to me that in all of your films, as a interviewer / interrogator, you were very concerned about some form of truth. But I think in this movie, you're having a beautiful conversation with what it seems to be a friend, an equal, somebody you admire, where it feels like you're okay with the idea that there is no such a truth. That
No, that's not right.
not right? No. Okay, tell me.
You know, I keep working on my lines about this kind of thing, but all of documentary is concerned with truth. The minute you start making films that are related to the world around us, truth enters into it. The mistake that people often make is that they think, okay, let me interrupt myself. I read a review of the Pigeon Tunnel.
Me? Am I making too
That's pretty frightening.
Sorry.
I obviously said something wrong. I read a review that said, we don't know what's true and what's false in this movie. Well, you don't know what's true and what's false in any movie. Just because a movie tells you that something is true, that doesn't mean it is true. Truth is a quest. Truth is something that you embark on and hope to get closer to, maybe never really arriving at the truth in the end. And this is one of the very few films that I have made where the protagonist actually tells you what he's saying is untrue. So truth enters endlessly. He even has a speech at the end of the movie about truth. Is there such a thing as objective, absolute truth? Yes, absolutely. We may never be able to find it. We may never be able to know it, but it's there. Philip K. Dick said about reality, it's that which does not go away when we cease to believe in it. And he knew what he was talking about.
But there is something really beautiful too about finding or sensing that there is some truth behind people telling us something similar to it. People telling us a story, and we know there is truth
You
there.
assume we know what it is. We don't know what it is. We look for it. I mean, it's one of my favorite scenes in the Pigeon Tunnel. You see his father. He's in prison. And the young David Cornwell comes to visit Daddy. And they wave. He's dressed like the Monopoly Man. Was he dressed like the Monopoly Man? No. No, he was not. And then at the end of this long scene, David Cornwell tells us that it's probably untrue because he subsequently learned there's no way from the prison, from any prison window, you can see the road. What do I take from that? The story's untrue. It's apocryphal. Is it a good story? Kind of is, yes. Did I shoot it? Yes, I did. Am I sorry? Not really.
But do you also take that here is a young child kind of like projecting in his imagination what he would have liked to happen? And there is
Well, of
beautiful
course.
truth in that, right?
I wouldn't say there's a truth in that. There's no such thing as beautiful or unbeautiful truth. There's truth and there's untruth. And there are movies where truth is absolutely central. In The Thin Blue Line, did this guy shoot the cop or not? Yes or no? True or false? There's a lot of things going on in it, but one of those things going on in it is the question of absolute truth. What really happened in the world. This is a story about truth as well, but often stories about truth are stories about the illusion of truth, the avoidance of truth. So there you go.
And as an interviewer, Is the Errol Morris of like Gates of Heaven or Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control very different than the Errol Morris talking to David in this film?
Probably not. In this sense, that I've done so many interviews about this film. When you have an effective distributor, for example, Apple, they find a way to get you a lot of press, a lot of interviews. And I've done, I don't know, well over 100 interviews about this movie. And, you know, I wonder about what the hell am I saying? Do I believe any of it? And I do believe a lot of it. It makes me think about the nature of interviewing. The whole movie starts off with a question about the nature of interviewing. He wants it to be adversarial. Who starts off an interview saying, "Who are you?" Which is the short form of, "Who the fuck are you?" And I tell him, truthfully, I don't know, I'm not sure I can answer that. Not because I don't want to answer it, I just can't. Who am I? Not sure. And he also confuses, I think deliberately, interviews and interrogations in such a way that I started to wonder myself, are they one and the same? Am I somehow delusional here? What is the difference between an interview and an interrogation?
Well, you do call your device Interrogatron, don't you?
Interrotron.
Interrotron.
Yes. My wife, who named it, said it was a combination of, yes, there's interview, what was the other thing? What?
Terror.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Terror. In an interrogation, you're after something. Here's why I've come down after 100 interviews, doing this again and again and again and again, is that interviews are a mixture of interrogations and interviews. But when I first started doing interviews, years ago, 1,000 years ago, shortly after the fall of the Roman Empire, I had this idea that I should say nothing in an interview. Would it be possible to do an interview and say nothing? Absolutely nothing. And just get that person who I'm interviewing to talk. And I was investigating a murderer in central Wisconsin, Ed Gein. And I would go into people's houses with a tape recorder that was already running, cassette tape recorder, put it down on a table so they could see the tape recorder, but I wouldn't make any reference to it, and see what happened. And I actually did achieve it once or twice, a half hour or longer interview where my voice is not on the tape. The shut the fuck up and listen school of interviewing. And it's not adversarial. And Gates of Heaven is so much a product of that school. It's letting people, what was my line? If you let people talk without interrupting them for 5-6 minutes, they will show you how crazy, how batshit crazy they really are. And it's always worked. But occasionally, the desire to hear some specific piece of information intrudes. And you go after it.
But it feels very joyful, though, I think, to hear you sometimes in your films. To hear your voice establishing the connection with the other person. To imagine a conversation rather than an interrogation.
Well, it was a conversation with David Cornwell. I really like talking to that guy. You can see that he's extraordinarily eloquent. Perhaps the most eloquent person I've ever interviewed. And a pleasure to talk to. And he's thinking. He's not just parroting stuff. He's thinking about stuff, and that also is one of his projects. So, yeah, I'm glad I made the movie.
And he's actually also addressing you, like he wants you to think in real time also,
Yes.
to kind of like show something about yourself. Did that
Indeed.
happen?
You tell me.
It did.
Yeah.
I have more questions, but perhaps you beautiful people do too. So anybody wants to? Yes, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, if he's gone now, but if you could ask him one more question, what would it be?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the intention was to do more interviews. Obviously, it's really difficult to interview someone who's dead, although I won't say it's completely out of the question, but it imposes certain constraints and difficulties. But so many things. Originally, I wanted to make a series out of this. It was going to be a 5-part series. There's enough in the Pigeon Tunnel for 10 movies. But, you know, I have to do the bidding of my masters.
Can you tell us a bit about the process, and then we'll go to your question. Like when you knew that you wanted to do this film, and how did you organize it?
A producer friend of mine proposed it as a project. Set up a meeting between me and David. And I read The Pigeon Tunnel pretty late in the game, but before, of course, we embarked on this project. And I loved it. It's my favorite of his books. It's crazy. It's a crazy book. And in so many ways, it's the essence of David Cornwell. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Sort of loosely stitched together. There is no kind of through line, really. No overarching story that takes you from here to there. It's a series of parables, anecdotes. But it's great. It really is. Really great. And I was quite taken with the bookends, and I made them the bookends of the movie as well. The story of pigeons and the casino in Monte Carlo. That was the very beginning of the Pigeon Tunnel. And like any good Kafka parable, what does it mean? I'm not sure. You tell me. It has a kind of Sisyphean quality, a desperate quality. Endless repetition ending in, what is it again? Death. And the very end of it is Rudolf Hess and his flight from Germany to Scotland in 1941. Ostensibly, although no one really knows, to secure a peace with the British government, peace between Nazi Germany and Britain. And he tells us at the heart of this great historical mystery may be just nonsense, randomness, absurdity. No, I love making this movie. It gave me a lot to think about. And if you haven't read the book, don't see the movie. Oh, wait. Too late for that. But the book is really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, question in the back.
Yeah, thank you. I was curious how many interview hours were there that you edited through?
4 days. Do you know what the total time of interviews was?
16 hours.
16 hours? There you go.
Thank you.
Similar question to the one that just came from the back. I was a part of the Tom O'Neill job that you did in Los Angeles where we mounted 11 cameras for his interview in the room. I tried to count how many cameras and how many different angles you had on your interview with this gentleman, and I couldn't track it. So how many cameras do you use for your interviews? Because 11 made sense back then, and I was
I think there were only 4 cameras.
Yeah.
only.
What's so funny?
Yeah. And what's happening with the Tom O'Neill story, the chaos, the chaos book, and your interviews with him?
When anybody ever says that's a good question, I think you're really saying, I wish you hadn't asked that question. But you did. It's too late now. We're making it. How many years is this now?
Oh, like 9.
9 years? I was contacted, I'll do this quickly. Spare me if you're really annoyed by the story. I was contacted by my editor at Penguin, and he said he had a book where he paid some astronomical advance, and the guy couldn't finish it. Couldn't finish the book. Would I help him? So I met with the writer who couldn't finish the book, Tom O'Neill, and I said, you know, I don't really want to help you finish the book, but I'll make a movie. And so I interviewed Tom O'Neill. You were part of it. What did you do?
I'm a camera assistant. I rigged all of the 11 cameras around his home/writing space in
Yes.
Venice.
Wow.
Yeah, great to see you.
Great to see you again. Thank you. And we edited it. It's one of the few instances where I didn't get a release because of the really strange circumstances how this project came about. I'm not even sure. Do you know why I didn't get a release?
No.
I don't know why, but I didn't. And then after the interview, he decided he didn't want to do it with me.
Oh dear.
And I had spent all this money on shooting this stuff, you know, considerable amount of money. And that was it. He found a writer from the Paris Review. He finished the book. The book came out. The book got a lot of reviews, got some attention. Joe Rogan popularized it. Can say a lot about that. And then it was picked up by Amazon. They tried to write a script. They didn't like the script, and eventually they dropped the project. And when they dropped the project, Tom O'Neill came back to me and said, "Are you still interested in doing this?"
What did you say?
I said, "Yes." Because I'm an idiot. That's why.
They have a lot of footage.
Yeah, we figured we had a lot of footage, but in retrospect, that probably wasn't a good enough reason to say it.
I was going to ask you, like, would you ever consider, let's say that he didn't go back to you.
Yes.
Would you ever consider turning this into an opportunity to make a film about a failure of making a film with somebody?
You couldn't do it because I still needed, whether it was a success or a failure, still needed a release in order to use it.
Well, you could have done a recreation or like talk your version of the story.
Cast someone as Tom O'Neill and then shoot the whole thing over again. That is a possibility. Another possibility is sticking a gun in my mouth.
Yes, both unlikely.
No, but so we're still at it.
When do you think we'll see it?
Next year.
Next year. Excellent. Any more questions or comments? Oh yeah, all the way in the back.
What are your thoughts of David Cornwell now that it's out, you've been interviewed?
I really like the guy. I can't say that, you know, I'm asked this question repeatedly, are you, or were you, and are you now a complete fan of his literature? And the answer is not really. He's written a lot of books. I don't know what the total is. It's somewhere between 20 and 30 novels. It's a lot. And in truth, I've had a hard time reading his books. Maybe I'm not disciplined enough. But I love The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That I read before I took this project on. I love The Pigeon Tunnel. I almost made it all the way through Tinker Tailor. Not quite. It's very long. And yeah, and then I've read bits and pieces of I don't know how many novels. One thing that's not really known about this guy is he's a great nonfiction writer. I think one of the great nonfiction writers. And what's so interesting about the story is he is a documentarian in so many ways. I mean, if you've read, the Sisman book that just came out about all of his love affairs, I mean, it's a story about a guy who goes around the world talking to people, fucking people perhaps as well, literally and figuratively, and creating literature out of it. So, no, I actually really like the guy. He's an incredible character.
Yes.
Did talking to him have an influence on your view of the Cold War?
It actually did. The second chapter in the Pigeon Tunnel, so he's a very young spy in Bonn. This is 1960. He's spying and he's also a civil servant. And he notices, evidently it was hard not to notice, that there were all these Nazis in the new German Republic. And he talks about the number 2 Nazi. I guess he was the number 2 official in the Bundesrepublik, an ex-Nazi, if there is such a thing. Jews have trouble with the concept of ex-Nazis. Once a Nazi. You can finish it. So there's this guy named Hans Globke, who's the number 2, is that it? The number 2 official in the Bundesrepublik, who wrote the Nuremberg Laws. So this is crazy. You have a guy, I mean, rightly or wrongly, the Nuremberg Laws were certainly part of what made the Holocaust possible. You have a guy who wrote the Nuremberg Laws, serving in the Bundesrepublik in a position of great authority, and David asks the question, wait a second. Didn't we fight a war about this? Didn't we fight a war against Nazi Germany? And he says so many profound things about us inventing the enemies that we need. And you almost would think that he has some kind of relativistic ethics or morality, but he doesn't. He has an implacable sense of good and evil, of right and wrong. And that's what's so interesting about the guy. It's a massive contradictions, I might add. On one hand, no moral relativism. On the other hand, a kind of despair about history and the meaning of history.
Like everything is chaos, right?
Everything
It
is
just art gives you some sort of order.
indeed. I think that is the correct way of looking at that end of the film. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Do you feel the same way?
I do. How could you not feel that history is chaos if you just look around you at the moment? I mean, what the hell is going on in the world? It's a kind of, insane place we're living in.
Does making your art help you find some sort of peace in the chaos?
I don't know if it helps you make peace, but it gives me something to do. It's like, an after-school activity that keeps me busy.
Yes.
In the film, Le Carre suggests that the interrogator or interviewer learns something about himself in the process of interrogating or interviewing. And I'm wondering if you feel that you learned anything about yourself in the process of your conversations with him or in making this.
I would say absolutely yes, but I'm really scared you're going to ask me.
You don't want me to ask you what? All the dirty secrets?
What?
All your dirty secrets you don't want to tell?
He has made me think really deeply about the nature of interrogations and interviews. And so much so that I started writing a book about interrogations and interviews called Conversations with Myself. And Yeah, I make movies, at least I tell myself I make movies so I can learn something, and I learned an enormous amount making this movie. It's a great experience. And for that, I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful to all of the people who were involved. The Cornwell children, Apple, but primarily, of course, the guy himself, John Le Carre, David Cornwell.
Did you ever show him anything that you shot with him?
I don't think we did. Did we ever show?
Yeah, he saw an early cut.
Really?
Yeah,
Did he like it?
he did.
Oh.
You have notes?
I'm sure he did. He didn't share them with me.
You know. Although I'm very fond of saying, better a feed bag than feedback.
Any last questions? Yes.
Feedback about you.
Well, he does at the very beginning. He clearly enjoyed doing it. He wouldn't have done it if he didn't enjoy it, and I enjoyed it. And from all of the accounts that I've heard from the children, he enjoyed talking to me. And we were going to do more, it's just that his health did not allow for it. So there you go.
But it seems to give you a lot.
I think he did, yes.
I think he did.
He
I
did.
don't know what else he could have given you.
Well, he could have given me more, but there's always more, but
What is this pressure that you were talking about when you're talking to him? It's like people are expecting me to like push you more towards something. What is
yeah, I
this?
got, there's a whole peanut gallery telling me, ask him this, ask him that. And I try to explain to them, I really don't need this. You know, I think I can come up with an interview on my own. Assistance of a whole crowd of people. It's not a crowdsource interview. It's interviewing David Cornwell. And everybody really wanted him to talk endlessly about betrayal, as if that's the only thing you could talk to him about. And betrayal is part of it. And he talks a lot about betrayal. It's not as if that subject was avoided altogether. But there's a lot of stuff. And there's a small canvas in a movie, finite amount of time that you have to work with. And we explore a lot of subjects within the confines of that canvas. So I'm happy with it. Can always do more, but I did something.
You did an extraordinary film in my book. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.